Okay, let's dive right into this deeply personal, profoundly inspiring explainer. Today, we are tearing down the walls and exploring the absolute architecture of the self-forged hero. We're going to look at breaking generational cycles, healing from incredibly heavy pasts, and intentionally designing the exact person you are meant to become. The source material we are walking through today reveals deeply personal accounts of a life that has weathered really dark shadows to achieve just incredible triumphs. Honestly, these are some of the most cherished, hidden, and amazing stories of a truly horrible yet amazing life journey. It's a genuine journey of personal redemption, and it shows us, plain as day, that transformation isn't just some abstract concept floating around out there. It is a deliberate daily practice. So we're starting right at a core truth, and it's a big one. Choosing who you are becoming matters far, far more than who you've been. Listen, your past does not have to be your prison. Whether you're dealing with a really difficult upbringing, carrying around inherited trauma, or honestly, maybe you're just feeling stuck in a prolonged rut, the very first act of liberation is waking up and realizing something crucial. The trajectory you were placed on, it is absolutely not the one you have to stay on. You and only you have the ultimate authority to rewrite the narrative. Now, this foundational concept from James Clear, it perfectly captures the reality of what we're talking about here. It tells us that the path you choose defines not just where you go, but exactly who you become along the way. Think about it. You do not rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your identity. You can set literally all the ambitious goals you want, right? You can map out these incredible milestones for your life. But if you don't change how you view yourself at your very core, you will inevitably snap right back to your old self. The gravitational pull of who you believe you are will always, always override what you temporarily want to achieve. Think of this unseen script like a tangled web. Long before we even have the awareness to question it, society, our families, and our early and sometimes really painful experiences begin writing a life script for us. We are just handed these inherited blueprints, and we unconsciously adopt the labels written on them. We become the troublemaker, or the shy kid, or maybe the fiercely responsible one. And without even realizing it, we build entire identities around these external labels, never having actually consciously agreed to them. You might be living an identity right now that feels so deeply personal to you, but actually, it belongs entirely to someone else's expectations or some random past circumstance. So here's the crucial point. Behavioral change, like, say, quitting a bad habit, it just isn't enough if your internal narrative is still telling the story of your old self. Imagine someone who quits smoking, right? But they still introduce their health updates to their friends by saying, well, I used to be really unhealthy. The behavior changed, sure, but the underlying identity didn't budge. The behavior is just the evidence. The identity is a final verdict. Until your self-story fully catches up to your actions, those old patterns are going to keep pulling you back into the shadows. You have to embody the new version of yourself completely and just leave that old label behind for good. Okay, before we get into the exact nitty-gritty mechanics of how to actually execute this change, we really have to prove that change is even possible in the first place. We're going to look at the incredibly powerful accounts of people who survived heavy, difficult pasts and just flat out refused to become what hurt them. These are the cycle breakers. They didn't just survive their circumstances, they actively utilized their pain to consciously engineer something far, far better. The source material walks us through this incredibly powerful story of a friend who grew up with a deeply negative example in his life. He had a bad older brother who really should have been a guide, but instead he became this glaring, flashing warning sign of exactly what not to be. But instead of inheriting those destructive flaws, this friend used them as absolute fuel. He intentionally forged a self that was not handed to him by his circumstances. People who grow up with negative examples often become the absolute best versions of themselves simply because they know exactly what they never want to be. They turn shadow into light, they build themselves with pure intention and just fierce clarity. Now consider the heroic transformation of a father who just completely tore up and rewrote his life script. Just think about his inherited state for a second. Cold, calculating, unloved, angry, and defeated. Let's be honest, most men who start there, they stay there for life. The gravity of that kind of pain is usually just too strong. But he broke that trajectory. He consciously chose a radically different path. He went from cold to warm, from calculating to wise. He became loving, peaceful, and good. He completely transformed from defeated to dedicated. He became someone entirely worthy of love and utterly capable of giving it. That level of personal evolution, it's not common. It is absolutely legendary. The actual turning point of his entire life really came down to just one unyielding declaration. Watching someone who had every reason in the world to stay broken choose instead to heal and become whole, that is the ultimate redemption arc. He looked at the immense darkness inside himself, he faced the heavy generational weight he carried, and he simply decided, no, I will not be this. That single, solid boundary line is what separates the victim of circumstance from the author of a brand new legacy. Let's pivot a bit and look at how this overarching concept of choice builds directly into practical psychology. We can think of your identity as the core operating system that's running silently beneath every single decision you make, every habit you form, and every relationship you build. Just like a smartphone or a laptop, if the core operating system is outdated or totally corrupted, it literally doesn't matter how many shiny new apps you install. The device is not going to run smoothly. It's like people trying to change by just upgrading their daily routines, downloading new productivity habits or setting massive fitness goals, while leaving a completely corrupted operating system totally untouched. That foundational system is just full of old beliefs that quietly undermine all their new behaviors. If you try to change your habits without a true system upgrade, you are going to experience constant friction, complete exhaustion, and recurring crashes. But when you finally achieve full transformation, when your internal identity and your external behavior are perfectly aligned, change actually stops feeling like an uphill battle. It transforms into effortless momentum. So how do we actually upgrade that underlying OS? Well, we can use the concept of an alter ego as a really powerful design tool. Now, hear me out. This isn't about faking it or pretending to be someone you aren't. It is about consciously designing the next version of yourself, a character who already fully embodies the traits you're actively trying to grow into. Think about world-class performers who step into a completely distinct persona right before hitting the stage or walking onto the court. It acts as this incredible psychological bridge, basically granting you permission to act from a place of supreme confidence and growth while your internal feelings are still busy catching up. And you know what? The science absolutely backs this up. Psychologist Daryl Bem's self-perception theory reveals a super fascinating truth. We don't always act because of who we are. Rather, we discover who we are by watching how we act. Think about that for a second. You observe yourself taking a small disciplined action, and you interpret that evidence. You say to yourself, hey, that's something a remarkably confident person would do, and you instantly reinforce that new identity. Over time, as all these tiny observations stack up, it compounds into your new reality. You literally act your way into a new way of thinking. Transformation is literally never an accident. Just like building a house from the ground up, it requires deliberate, thoughtful architecture. It is a structured act of self-design built one single intentional decision at a time. So let's walk through the exact step-by-step architecture you can use to forge your new identity, right down to the fundamental studs. Every identity is built out of layered beliefs, and the very first step is just having the courage to conduct a really thorough life audit. You have to decide exactly what stays and what gracefully goes. You sit down and list your core beliefs across key life areas, your health, your finances, your relationships. Then you ask the hard, clarifying question, does this belief actually serve who I am becoming? If it doesn't, you label it for release. And the absolute beauty of this is that you don't even have to violently fight those old limiting beliefs. You simply stop feeding them with your attention and your energy. You starve what doesn't serve you, and you aggressively feed what does. Moving on to step 2, and this one is vital because words are architecture. The language you use builds the very walls of your reality. You need to craft a deliberate, present-tense declaration of exactly who you are becoming. Not a distant goal, not a wishful someday I will be, but an active, lived commitment. This identity sentence becomes the absolute anchor for your brand new operating system. Your sentence might be something like, I'm a person who handles challenges with calm confidence. This single, beautiful sentence becomes your internal compass. Whenever you face a sudden difficulty, a moment of intense friction, or a huge temptation to revert back to your old habits, you just return to this sentence. You pause for a second and ask yourself, what would this person do? And then you simply execute that action. It completely takes the emotional guesswork out of difficult situations. Step 3 is where the rubber finally meets the road, changing one daily behavior. Listen, sweeping transformation is built from remarkably small, almost unnoticeable beginnings. Trying to overhaul your entire life overnight, that is a guaranteed recipe for burnout and failure. Instead, you want to anchor your newly chosen identity with one tiny, undeniable action. It could literally be as simple as drinking a single glass of water first thing in the morning to cast a vote for being a healthy person. Or it could be lacing up your running shoes every single day to signal activity, even if you don't actually work out that day. It's the ritual itself that sends the signal of the new identity straight to your brain. And here is step 4. Honestly, this might be the most uncomfortable but liberating truth in this entire explainer. Waiting until you feel like the person you want to become is a massive trap. The feeling of readiness never, ever arrives first. You have to act like them before you feel ready. When you feel that inevitable twinge of imposter syndrome, that little voice telling you that you're just faking it, you must reframe it. That isn't a warning sign telling you to stop. It is the precise sensation of growth. It means you are stretching into new territory. You must forcefully step into that good, strong identity and let your environment and eventually your emotions catch up to you. We've talked a lot about the mechanics, but let's bring this all back to those deeply personal accounts of overcoming a heavy past. The transformation of the parents in our source material didn't just heal their own personal wounds. It provided the exact blueprint needed to turn subsequent pain into absolute power for the next generation. It created this undeniable lineage of evolution, proving once and for all that the chain of inherited trauma can absolutely be severed. You inherit what the source material brilliantly calls a trinity of transformation. A mother who softened from cold brilliance into warm goodness. A father who rose from a state of anger and defeat into profound love and dedication. And the author evolving from a hurt boy into a mythic, strong protector. This proves that redemption is profoundly real. It proves that goodness is an absolute, undeniable choice. They inherited the sheer ability to turn pain into enduring power, and so can you. When you finally reach that summit of your own making, you realize you've completely broken the old self. You didn't just passively accept what the world or your past tried to make you into. You completely broke the trajectory. You stepped fully into your potential, and you transformed into a heroic protector by your own conscious design. You didn't just survive the fire, you used it to forge something entirely unbreakable. So, you have the architecture now. You have the blueprint of self-perception and identity sentences. You have the living, breathing proof from these amazing life stories that generational cycles can absolutely be broken and completely rewritten. So, the only question left for you as we wrap up this explainer today is this: who will you choose to become today? Take that first small step, and I'll see you in the next one.